Hey, this is Wes Fryer. Today is Friday, September the 8th, 2023, and I want to talk a little bit about Burning Man, being a communitarian prepper, and the kind of thoughts I have about that. Preparation with Hurricane Lee off in the Atlantic heading towards North America, and I'm going to talk a little bit about fuels and projecting how long you can run your generator for, and then how long you need to store your fuels in order to rotate them and make sure that they're good. So I call this channel my communitarian prepper channel, and the reason is because I think it is important for us to prepare for natural disasters and unexpected emergencies, not only to take care of ourselves and our family, but so we could also contribute to our community. And actually I saw a prepper channel here recently. It was called Community Prepper, which is maybe along some of the same lines. And I've said this before, I don't want to be naive, and I don't think there's any way, that any of us are reasonably going to be able to take care of, tons and tons of people, like if we have like a really sustained power grid outage. But I think that in general, a lot of people are really good. And the reason I mentioned Burning Man is because I listened to a great podcast today. I'm almost finished with it. But the whole first section is about Burning Man. And the podcast is called Hard Fork. Kevin Roos and Casey Newton are the two podcasters. It's by the New York Times. And they had a person who was at the Burning Man event, which happens out in the desert in California, on Rock Mesa or something. And anyway, they had a bunch of rain there, and it kind of ended up in this, well, they wanted to say not a natural disaster, but folks had to shelter in place. The mud was so thick you couldn't drive out, and people were stuck. And so I would commend this to you. This is the Hard Fork podcast. I'll link to it in the description of this video. And I think I need to start putting these posts on our family learning blog too. So anyway, I'll link it in the description, and if I put it on the blog, I will too. It is the September 8th version of Hard Fork. It was really inspiring to hear about how people did so many things to try to help each other out. I think that sometimes when we view some prepper videos on YouTube, and this is not true of everything, but it can be true of a bunch, people sort of get this idea that we just have to prepare for the zombie apocalypse, and the most important thing is going to be fighting off hordes of people who are going to be coming to your house to get your stuff. Now, in a very extended and protracted power outage and emergency situation, there's who knows. I mean, look at Katrina. I heard lots of stories, some pretty hair-raising stories about Hurricane Katrina and folks that were down there, and how civil society can break down quickly. That can totally happen. But I just wanted to point out this very recent situation that just happened this last week with Burning Man, and some great stories of people taking care of each other, checking up on each other, sharing water, sharing food. But it also pointed to how important it is to prepare for multiple things. One of the issues that I heard about on the news and then I listened to on this podcast was talking about preparing for waste disposal. Okay, the bathroom. How are you going to dispose of waste? The bathrooms and toilets there at Burning Man got incredibly nasty because they got filled up and people weren't there to be able to clean stuff up, and it was a mess. It was bad. And in a prolonged situation, that can actually lead to disease and all kinds of problems. So I will link on my Communitarian Prepper channel, and I'll put this link up here. It's comprep, COMMPREP.wesfryer.com, where I'm just kind of have collected some different things related to prepping and prepping in the spirit of not only wanting to take care of yourself and your family, but also some neighbors and some others. A link to a really excellent video that I just watched last night, where it was talking about this whole swath of issues that we have to talk about. So that's a little bit about Burning Man. Let's talk about Hurricane Lee. So as I record this in the evening after school on September 8th, there is a Category 5 hurricane off the Atlantic coast. Now it's hundreds of miles away, and it looks like it's going to stay north of Puerto Rico, and the whole forecast is that this thing is going to intersect with a storm system that's over North America, and it's going to push it out, and it may not, contact the eastern United States very directly, and it just may have minor effects. But the thing is, we don't know, and the potential, for a catastrophic hurricane to hit the eastern seaboard or the Gulf of Mexico or Florida, certainly in the Caribbean. I mean, it feels like a shooting gallery every hurricane season. We have a good family friend that lives in Puerto Rico, and it's just hard to imagine, how stressful and how much anxiety, he and his family experience every year. But I think they have gotten used to it. And so one of the things that we all need to do, I think, is prepare for an extended power grid interruption. There are a lot of different ways that can happen. And I've possibly shared this on the channel before when we lived in Oklahoma City before we moved here to North Carolina. I mean, we had the transformer that was just on our block go out, and it was underground, and so it affected a small number of people. It was the folks on our block, and they had to come to our next door neighbor's yard, cut a hole in her fence, bring a trenching tool, get this thing out. It took more than 24 hours to get that, restored and replaced. And so then that was a small transformer that was just taking care of a neighborhood block. At that time, we had coolers. I went and got ice. We had a lot of stuff in our ice chests. If you're looking at 12 to 24 hours, depending, maybe your ice chest or your chest cooler is going to be okay, but your refrigerator, the issue is you can lose your food pretty quickly if your power goes out. And so preparing and having a calculation. So I've been doing some back of the envelope, calculations here, and I've got my fuels here. So we've got a Firman, 3250, it's like a 3200 watt, I think, dual fuel generator. We picked it up at Costco. I think it's normally like $900 or something now. I think I got it for like $600. I got it last spring or at the early part of the summer. And so it's a dual fuel. And here's what I'm, calculating and trying to figure out. I am pretty sure that I don't have enough fuel to run that generator very long. I kind of think I could run it for about 2 days, but this all depends on the load, right? How much are we going to put on that generator? And then what is its fuel consumption with both gasoline as well as propane? So I'm going to share a little bit about sort of where I am with this, because what I'd like to be able to do is maybe have enough that I could, run it for a week. I don't know if that's going to be crazy or realistic, but at least more than just a day or two. And I think that's what I have my capacity right now. So let me kind of tell you a couple things. Number one, gasoline. It doesn't store well for long periods of time. So according to the materials that I've found online, without having stabilizer, put into your gas, and you want to get ethanol-free gasoline, you want the pure stuff, because there's some really good demos I've seen on YouTube where people are letting it settle out, and you can see how much of it is not gas, how much of it is water, because it's ethanol and it's not pure gas. So go buy pure gas. We have a place that's not far away from us. It's more expensive, but you need to do that because your generator is going to burn more efficiently, and you're going to have a lot better results with it. Of course, if you can't get that, then you use what you have. But I got this probably about 3 months ago, and so I right now am at the point where I didn't put stabilizer in it, and that means I need to swap it out. So with gasoline, of course, it's dangerous to store it. You need to make sure that you have it in a container that's designed for gasoline. But what I'm going to do this weekend is I'm going to go ahead and put this gas. And let me say, I hate these new containers with these quote unquote safe pour spouts and stuff. Man, it's just about impossible. It actually may be something that I'll 3D print. That's an idea. I don't know if I can do that or not at school. But it would sure be nice to have a pour spout that's a little bit easier. Anyway, I'm going to put this in our car. And the reason for that is because we need to use it it's not going to store longer than probably 3 to 6 months, and we're about at the 3-month period. So after that, I'm going to fill it up, and I have stabilizer, and I'm going to put stabilizer in it, and that should allow this to store safely for 12 to 24 months, a year to 2 years. So I'm going to write down when I, have done that and put the stabilizer, and it's one of these things that I'm going to track and, stay up on, because, the last thing that I would want is to have a power outage and, not be able to run my generator, and, we have to, eat all our food really quick or whatever. There's, people that have barbecues and things like that, because they're like, wait, we gotta get rid of all this food. I want to be able to maintain that. Now, propane. Propane stores in a more stable format. In fact, I don't think I have that number of how long, but I know it's longer than gasoline. So somebody can probably write that in the comments, or I'll try to find that and put that in the description, or I'll put a comment on this video. But it stores for longer periods of time. This is a 15-gallon tank, and let me tell you a little bit about my calculations here. Now it all depends upon, what the load, what the fuel consumption, depending by fuel type, is of the generator, and then, that'll change by load if we're using it at 50% or we're using it at 100%. That's gonna, and then how much fuel we have. That's gonna tell us how long we can run this. So my tank that I have in the generator is almost 2 gallons. It's a 1.8 gallon tank. And so doing some math, if I have about 10 hours, 9 to 10 hours of run time on a 1.8 gallon tank, and that's what the Firman folks say in the manual, then that's going to mean that I have somewhere around 24 to 25 hours of runtime at an average utilization using this. So about a day. Okay, this is going to let my generator run for about a day, but I'm going to try to calculate that more precisely, and I'll tell you here in a minute how I'm going to do that. Let's talk about propane. So this is a 15-gallon propane tank, and with propane, the estimate is at 50% load, probably 5 to 6 hours. So, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm learning, and one of the reasons I'm sharing this is because this is a journey I'm on. I think it's important to prepare for emergencies. I don't want to be fearful and paranoid at all, but man, if you haven't been paying attention, our electrical grid in the United States is pretty fragile. A couple years ago, Texas almost had their grid have a catastrophic failure where it would have taken weeks and weeks, if not months, to bring it back. That happened in the wintertime. They've gotten a lot more capacity, things have improved, but Asheville, North Carolina, this last winter break, over Christmas break, had a big freeze, water pipes froze, and a filtration plant went down. And anyway, they had water boil orders for quite a while, and so stuff can happen, and we need to be prepared. So if my math is wrong here, help me out, because I'm just sharing kind of how I'm trying to figure this, and hopefully I'm not way off. I used to teach 4th grade math when I started to become a school teacher, and I teach middle school now. But anyway, it's a great word problem, right? This is real world math. How long am I going to run my generator? So what I'm figuring is that with a 15-gallon tank at about 50% for my generator, I probably have somewhere between 15 and 18 hours. So if I'm figuring that right, I've got a little bit longer capacity with the gasoline than I do here. What I think I want to do is buy a 100-gallon propane tank. It's going to be a heavy sucker. But I think I can get one of those at Lowe's or Home Depot for somewhere around $160. And I think, if I'm doing my math right, that's going to give me somewhere around 100 hours. But here's what I want to do. And I don't know that I'm going to do that this weekend, but probably two months ago or so, I went ahead and did a full, and you can see this video, I'll link it below. I just did a full-on test, getting my generator out here in the backyard, because you can't run it in the garage or inside, of course, getting it under some shelter, under a table, because if it rains or there's weather, I want it to be protected, and then getting my extension cords out and plugging in my fridge and my deep freeze. Now, the reason I'm not going to do that this weekend is I don't have this piece of equipment, but there is a piece of equipment, and I'll find it and put it in the show description too, where you can measure the actual load that your appliances are drawing, and then we can use that for the math problem, okay? In fact, I may end up doing something with my iPad and working the math problem and, seeing how that's all calculated. The bottom line is I want to be able to run this generator for a longer period of time. And with the news coming out of Burning Man this last week, and the news coming out of the Atlantic Basin and the Caribbean, as far as hurricanes and stuff, we are not right on the coast here in Charlotte. We are inland a pretty long ways. We're like 4 hours from the coast if you're driving. And the stories that I've heard of this area, I think it was Hurricane Hugo, that might have been like 15 or 20 years ago. That was the last major hurricane that did a lot of damage here as far as trees and power outages and stuff like that. But it doesn't have to be a hurricane. There's other things that can happen. And I hope that we're not going to go to war against China. I hope that things are going to be peaceful and the war in Ukraine with Russia is going to end. But you just never know. And we hear about things happening, we see different things, and it just has over time encouraged me to think about how I want to be responsible to take care of our family, but also to maybe have some extra capacity to be able to help others. There's a lot that goes into preparing for an emergency, and whatever kinds of preparations you do today or whenever you can, as soon as you can, those things are going to pay off, right? I know this from, ice storm experiences in Oklahoma, because the last time you want to be going to the grocery store to buy groceries and produce and milk and toilet paper and bottled water and whatever, the last time you want to go is right when the news is starting to say ice storm coming, in 2 days or coming tomorrow or whatever, because people panic and they end up, racing and just buying all kinds of stuff. So a lot of things to consider. Fuel and electrical power generation is definitely important. I am thankful that we were able to purchase a generator, and I have some capacity to do this, and it's not just ice chests and ice, which, like I said, is what I had to do in Oklahoma City when we lost power for right about 24 hours. So we're better situated here. I think I've got about 2 days worth, but I'm going to get that device that will allow me to measure the load and find out. I kind of hope my generator might on the readout tell me that, and it didn't. But hey, it's a math problem and it's practical math. And so if you've got ideas or suggestions about this, if you've got it all varies depending upon the generator that you have and the load, etc. So anyway, based on the little estimates that I have, if I'm way off base or you've got a better way of thinking about that and calculating it, let me know. But I think I'm going to be able to get some very accurate numbers, because I will fill up the generator with 1.8 gallons of non-ethanol gasoline. And just like I did before, I will run it, with my deep freeze and refrigerator plugged in, and maybe a light, just kind of estimate, what the load might be, and then we'll find out. And with that number, I'll have a consumption number, and then I'll be able to much more accurately say, how many hours I'll be able to run the generator with gasoline. All right, I hope that's helpful. Again, visit my website, comprep, comprep.westfryer.com, and hopefully you'll find some more resources that could be helpful to you as you think about ways that you can prepare for natural disasters, for emergencies, to not only be able to take care of yourself and your family, but hopefully some neighbors and a few other folks. Take care.